Welcome back to Celebrity Hotline, where the stories are raw, the details are exclusive, and the drama is always on speed dial. Today we're dialing straight into the life of Selena Gomez, a journey of fame, heartbreak, resilience, and everything in between. Selena Gomez, 31, has built an extraordinary career spanning television, music, film, and business. But behind the fame lies a story of relentless personal challenges and quiet resilience. From her early days in Grand Prairie, Texas, where she was raised by a single mother, Gomez's ambition drove her to acting auditions as a child, landing her first role on Barney and Friends in 2002. Her life changed dramatically in 2007 when Disney cast her as Alex Russo in Wizards of Waverly Place, a role that would make her one of the most recognizable faces in teen television. The show's success cemented her status as a Disney darling, but it also created a public image she struggled to escape in adulthood. As she sought to transition into more mature roles with projects like Spring Breakers and the fundamentals of caring, Gomez found herself battling industry typecasting and an intrusive media culture more interested in her dating life than her creative work. In interviews, she expressed frustration at being treated as a product rather than a person, recounting moments when even her philanthropic efforts were overshadowed by questions about her past or her relationship with Justin Bieber. This tension between her private self and public image began to take a toll, a strain that intensified when her health began to fail. Diagnosed with lupus in 2014, Gomez faced unpredictable flare-ups that caused joint pain, fatigue, and other debilitating symptoms. The disease's physical toll was compounded by a growing sense of anxiety over whether she could sustain her demanding career. By 2016, the pressure reached breaking point during her revival tour. In rehearsal footage later revealed in her documentary, My Mind and Me, Gomez was visibly distressed, breaking down over technical mishaps and wardrobe issues before admitting to her team that she did not want to be alive at that moment. Days later, she abruptly canceled the remainder of the tour, officially citing health concerns, though the reality was an alarming collision of physical illness and mental strain. Her lupus battle reached a life-threatening stage in 2017 when her kidneys began to fail, leaving her in urgent need of a transplant. She had kept the severity of her condition private until her close friend Francia Raisa offered to be a donor. The surgery itself was complicated by a burst artery, requiring emergency intervention. Gomez would later describe the experience as terrifying, knowing how close she had come to losing her life. While recovering, she wrestled with the fear that the disease could return at any moment. The following year proved equally harrowing. In 2018, Gomez endured the emotional fallout of her final breakup with Bieber, who soon after became engaged and married to model Hailey Baldwin. At the same time, lupus complications returned, leaving her physically weak and mentally depleted. The unrelenting media attention only worsened matters, with paparazzi questions and tabloid speculation stripping away her sense of privacy. That October, she entered a psychiatric facility after experiencing severe anxiety attacks, depressive episodes, and dangerously low white blood cell counts linked to her treatments. She underwent dialectical behavior therapy in an effort to stabilize her emotions, but recovery was slow and isolating. One of the most invasive moments came when Gomez's own family learned of her hospitalization through a TMZ report, underscoring the loss of control she felt over her own narrative. By 2019, she finally received a diagnosis that helped explain years of emotional turmoil: bipolar disorder. The revelation was both daunting and relieving, giving her a name for the struggle she had endured in silence. Early stages of treatment left her feeling hollow and disconnected, leading her to work closely with mental health professionals to find a plan that allowed her to feel stable without losing her identity. During this period, she largely withdrew from the public eye, stepping away from social media and limiting contact with friends, at times battling suicidal thoughts. Even in isolation, Gomez remained committed to meaningful work, serving as executive producer on Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, a series tackling mental health, bullying, and suicide. She later acknowledged that the show's heavy themes mirrored her own struggles, making the project both draining and deeply personal. The years from 2017 to 2019 would come to define the most difficult chapter of her life, a period in which physical illness, mental health crises, and public scrutiny converged in a way that might have ended her career altogether. yet ultimately set the stage for her next transformation. By early 2020, Gomez was ready to re-emerge in the public eye, armed with a sense of clarity about her diagnosis and a determination to reclaim her story. She released Lose You to Love Me, a raw piano ballad that chronicled heartbreak, self-discovery, and emotional closure. The song, widely interpreted as a reflection on her past relationship with Bieber, became her first Billboard Hot 100 #1 and marked a turning point in her music career. Unlike earlier pop anthems, this single prioritized emotional truth over radio-friendly gloss, signaling a more mature, creative era. The success was quickly followed by her album Rare, which debuted at #1 and gave her a platform to speak openly about self-acceptance. That same year, she founded Rare Beauty, a cosmetics brand with a mission far beyond makeup sales. From the outset, Gomez insisted that the company's purpose would be to challenge unrealistic beauty standards and support mental health initiatives. She pledged that 1% of all sales would go to the Rare Impact Fund, with a goal of raising $100 million over 10 years for mental health services. It was a strategic move that positioned her not just as a celebrity entrepreneur, but as a business leader using her platform for advocacy. In the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, Gomez found herself, like millions of others, in lockdown. But rather than retreating from public engagement, she used digital platforms to amplify mental health awareness, speaking with experts and sharing personal coping strategies. For fans who had followed her struggles, these appearances offered a rare blend of vulnerability and guidance. Gomez openly discussed therapy, medication, and the stigma surrounding mental illness, hoping to normalize conversations that had once been taboo. Her activism gained a political dimension in 2022 when she appeared at the White House alongside First Lady Jill Biden for a youth mental health forum. Addressing an audience of advocates, policymakers, and young people, Gomez shared her journey from misdiagnosis and silence to acceptance and advocacy. Her speech, both candid and deliberate, urged lawmakers to expand mental health education and services nationwide, especially for underserved communities. The appearance cemented her role as one of the most prominent celebrity voices on the subject, earning praise from both mental health organizations and political leaders. Despite her growing presence as an advocate, Gomez did not step away from entertainment. She returned to television in the Hulu comedy mystery Only Murders in the Building, starring alongside Steve Martin and Martin Short. The show's critical and commercial success introduced her to a new audience and earned her Emmy nominations, proving she could thrive as both a dramatic and comedic actress. Behind the scenes, however, she continued to wrestle with the demands of balancing work and wellness. Filming schedules often tested the boundaries she had set for her mental health, forcing her to rely on her support network and management team to avoid the exhaustion that had plagued her earlier career. Her 2022 documentary, My Mind and Me, offered perhaps the clearest window yet into the reality of her life. Shot over 6 years, it combined tour footage, intimate conversations, and moments of raw vulnerability, including scenes in which she voiced self-doubt, frustration, and lingering grief over her past. It was not a glossy promotional film, but a portrait of a woman learning, sometimes painfully, how to live with both chronic illness and public scrutiny. Critics praised it for its honesty, while fans said it made them feel less alone in their own struggles. By 2023, Gomez's Rare Beauty had become one of the fastest-growing cosmetics brands in the world, praised for its inclusive shade range and user-friendly products. Yet she remained careful to frame its success not as a victory for herself alone, but as a step toward broader mental health support. The Rare Impact Fund had already funded programs in schools and community centers, with Gomez regularly checking in on initiatives to ensure they met her original mission. In interviews, she acknowledged that she no longer chased the idea of being universally liked or understood. Instead, she focused on using her career, whether through music, acting, or business, as a channel for connection and change. She spoke less about fame and more about purpose, describing herself not as a pop star or actress first, but as someone committed to leaving a tangible, positive legacy. The girl who once felt defined by headlines and paparazzi photos had grown into a public figure on her own terms, one whose greatest achievement might not be her chart-topping singles or awards, but her ability to turn personal pain into collective empowerment. By late 2023, Selena Gomez's presence in popular culture had evolved into something markedly different from her Disney beginnings or her early pop stardom. She had entered what many observers described as her third act, a phase defined not by chasing commercial dominance, but by cultivating authenticity, creative control, and social impact. Her schedule reflected that shift. While still committed to filming only murders in the building, she began selectively choosing projects that either aligned with her advocacy work or challenged her artistically. Rumors of a new album circulated throughout the year, but Gomez did not rush to meet fan demand, instead focusing on recording at her own pace, often in smaller, more intimate studio settings that allowed her to write without the pressure of chart expectations. In private, however, she was navigating a delicate balancing act. Friends and colleagues who had worked with her during this period spoke of her meticulous planning to avoid the burnout that had once derailed her. Call times were structured to ensure she could manage her lupus symptoms and long-haul promotional. Tours were often replaced by targeted media appearances. Yet even with these safeguards, flare-ups remained unpredictable. There were weeks when she would quietly disappear from the public eye, not as a calculated publicity move, but as a necessity for her health. That same year, Rare Beauty expanded into several new international markets, a milestone Gomez marked with a mixture of pride and caution. In her own words, the brand's rapid success was a gift and a responsibility, especially because each expansion meant more funds flowing into the Rare Impact Fund. Behind the celebratory launches, she and her team spent hours vetting mental health organizations across multiple countries to ensure that funding would be effective and culturally relevant. The process was painstaking, sometimes delaying grant announcements, but Gomez insisted it was better to be slow and thorough than risk tokenizing the work. In 2024, she returned to music more directly with hints of a stylistic shift. Studio insiders described her new material as more experimental, a blend of stripped-back production and textured electronic elements, with lyrics leaning heavily into themes of resilience, self-forgiveness, and the complex peace that comes with accepting an imperfect life. Unlike her earlier records, these tracks were shaped around her vocal imperfections, leaving in breaths and tonal cracks rather than polishing them out. For Gomez, the choice was symbolic, proof that beauty could exist in the unfiltered. Publicly, 2024 also marked her deeper immersion into policy-related advocacy. She appeared at mental health summits not only as a speaker but as a facilitator, leading conversations between young activists and lawmakers. These moments revealed a growing comfort with the political dimensions of her work, a space she once hesitated to enter for fear of controversy. But by this point, Gomez had accepted that meaningful change required engaging directly with decision-makers, even if it meant polarizing some segments of her audience. Through all of this, My Mind and Me remained a touchstone for fans, many of whom used it as an entry point into their own mental health journeys. Gomez occasionally rewatched sections herself, not as vanity, but as a reminder of how far she had come since the rawest moments captured on camera. In conversations with friends, she admitted that while she sometimes cringed at seeing her lowest points on screen, she knew the film's honesty had saved lives. Messages from viewers attested to it. By early 2025, Gomez stood at an unusual crossroads for a global celebrity. At 32, she had amassed chart-topping hits, industry accolades, and a thriving business empire, yet she seemed less concerned with adding to the list than with deepening the meaning behind it. Negotiations for her next television and film projects centered on stories that could be both commercially viable and socially resonant. She had no interest in filler work, as one producer put it. If a role didn't spark something personal in her, she walked away, even from lucrative offers. This selective approach extended to her public appearances. Awards shows became rare for her unless she was nominated or presenting for a cause she believed in. Red carpet events, once routine, were replaced with surprise visits to community centers supported by the Rare Impact Fund, or quiet days spent in recording studios. Paparazzi still trailed her, but the frenzy had mellowed compared to the peak of her tabloid years. In part, this was because Gomez had stopped feeding the cycle. Her social media remained curated but infrequent, and she refused to engage in online feuds or respond to gossip-driven headlines. Still, fame's shadow never fully disappeared. In March 2025, photos surfaced of Gomez looking visibly exhausted while leaving a medical building in Los Angeles. speculation about her health flooded social media, prompting her to address it briefly in an Instagram live session. "I'm okay," she told viewers, acknowledging she'd had a lupus checkup. "Some days are harder than others, but I'm still here, still working, still grateful." Her directness seemed to quiet the chatter, at least temporarily, and reinforced the boundaries she had worked so hard to build. As of mid-2025, Gomez's career arc reads less like a conventional rise and fall narrative and more like a sustained act of self-preservation in an industry that rarely rewards it. She has survived the physical devastation of lupus, the destabilizing effects of bipolar disorder, and the grinding exposure of celebrity culture, and has managed not only to continue creating, but to channel her platform into tangible contributions for others. Whether in the recording booth on a film set or in a policy forum, she carries the awareness that her influence comes with both opportunity and risk. It is this awareness, coupled with a refusal to sacrifice her health or authenticity for momentum, that has allowed her to remain both relevant and respected. In many ways, Selena Gomez in 2025 is a case study in redefining success, measured not by constant visibility, but by the integrity of the work produced and the lives impacted. She has learned, sometimes the hardest way possible, that survival itself can be a victory, and that the truest form of power is deciding entirely on her own terms where to place her energy next. This has been Celebrity Hotline, your direct line to Hollywood's untold truths. If you loved today's deep dive, don't hang up just yet. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you never miss a call, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay tuned, because the next big story is already ringing.